Captain Dmitry Volkov stood on the bridge of the UES Starforge, humanity's most feared war machine. The colossal dreadnought stretched over 2 kilometers in length, bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. Its mere presence in any system was enough to make entire fleets surrender without firing a shot. For months they had been patrolling the outer sectors, and every alien species they encountered whispered the same thing about humans. They were the galaxy's apex predators disguised as diplomats. The bridge operated with deadly efficiency until Communications Officer Rachel Martinez suddenly froze at her station. Her face drained of color as she received an incoming transmission. Every human on the bridge could sense the shift in atmosphere. Something terrible was about to happen. "Captain," Martinez said, her voice carrying the weight of impending doom. "Emergency transmission from the Zilani homeworld. They're under attack." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Every human officer knew what this meant. The Zilani were humanity's most beloved allies, gentle, peaceful beings who had shared their medical miracles freely with Earth. They were like the galaxy's favorite grandparents, and someone had just made the fatal mistake of hurting them. "Put it through," Volkov ordered, his voice carrying a coldness that made even his own crew shiver. The transmission was heartbreaking. "This is Research Director Kethvar of the Zilani Science Council. Unknown vessels are slaughtering our people. Our cities are burning. We have no weapons, no armies. If anyone can hear this, please help us. They're killing everyone." Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison was already pulling up tactical displays, his fingers moving with predatory precision. "Captain, whoever did this chose the wrong target. The Zilani have formal protection treaties with 17 human colonies and the Earth Federation itself." Volkov's smile was terrifying. "Send a priority transmission to Admiral Torres. Tell him the Zilani are under attack and request immediate authorization for total response." "Total response, sir?" Morrison asked, though he already knew the answer. "Every ship, every weapon, every Marine. Someone just signed their own death warrant." The communication with Earth Command connected within seconds. Admiral Jackson Torres appeared on screen, and the moment he saw Volkov's expression, his own, face hardened into something that would give nightmares to entire civilizations. "Admiral," Volkov reported with deadly calm, "unknown hostiles are conducting genocide against the Zilani. Multiple worlds are under attack. They're systematically exterminating our allies." Torres was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his words would be remembered throughout galactic history. "Captain Volkov, you are hereby authorized to deploy Protocol 7. I am immediately mobilizing the 1st, 3rd, and 7th fleets. Total strength, 238 warships." The bridge fell silent. Protocol 7 had never been used. It meant complete annihilation of the enemy. No survivors, no prisoners, no mercy. "Sir," Morrison said quietly, "that's over half of humanity's entire military force." Torres smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression any of them had ever seen. "The galaxy needs to learn a lesson. You don't touch humanity's friends. Signal every human ship within 50 light years. Tell them we're going to war. And this time, we're not holding back." As the transmission ended, Volkov turned to his crew. The atmosphere had changed completely. These weren't diplomats or explorers anymore. They were apex predators who had just been given permission to hunt. "All hands, condition red. Helm, maximum velocity to Zilani space. Communications, send a message on all frequencies. Any ship that doesn't belong to the Zilani government has exactly 1 hour to leave their space before we arrive. After that, we shoot first and identify the wreckage later." Throughout the ship, 2,000 human warriors prepared for battle. They had no idea that their response would become legendary. The day the galaxy learned why every species feared to wake the sleeping giant called humanity. The assembly point was designated Sector 7 Alpha, a seemingly empty patch of space that was about to become the most terrifying sight in galactic history. Ships began arriving within the first hour, dropping out of hyperspace with the precision of a death machine coming to life. Colonel Nina Blackstone stood in the observation deck of the assault carrier UES Vengeance, watching as humanity's true power revealed itself. She had seen many fleets in her 20-year military career, but nothing compared to what was gathering before her eyes. This wasn't just a fleet. This was an extinction event with engines. "Colonel," her aide Lieutenant Marcus Webb reported, his voice filled with awe and terror, "we now have 112 ships in formation. The dreadnoughts are taking position at the center. Each one of them could level a continent." Blackstone nodded grimly. Her Marine battalion was specially trained for orbital assaults, but even they had never been part of something this massive. "What's the reaction from other species monitoring our communications?" Webb checked his datapad. "Ma'am, we're picking up emergency transmissions from 17 different civilizations. The Corvan Empire has just moved their entire border fleet away from human space. The Thessian Republic is broadcasting on all frequencies that they had nothing to do with the Zalani attacks." A cold smile crossed Blackstone's face. "Good. Fear keeps the peace better than any treaty." On the command ship UES Apocalypse, Admiral Torres was coordinating the largest military mobilization in human history. His bridge crew worked with deadly efficiency as ship after ship reported ready for combat. The tactical display showed a formation that would have been impossible for any other species to assemble. Over 200 warships moving as one predatory organism. "Admiral," reported Captain Diana Cross, his chief of staff, "we're receiving panicked communications from neutral species across 3 sectors. The Hegemony Council is demanding to know why we're mobilizing such a massive force." Torres smiled coldly. "Tell them humanity is going to war. Nothing more." The truth was that the galaxy had grown complacent about human military power. For decades, humanity had been diplomatic, peaceful, focused on trade and exploration. Other species had forgotten the terrifying efficiency with which humans had conquered their own hostile world and expanded into space. They had forgotten that humanity was a species that had survived ice ages, world wars, and planetary disasters by becoming the most adaptable and ruthless predators in known space. "Sir," Cross continued, "we're also receiving requests for asylum from several species in the Outer Rim. They're afraid we're starting a galactic war." "We're not starting anything," Torres replied. "We're ending it, permanently." As the hours passed, the fleet grew beyond all reasonable proportions. The newest arrivals included the super dreadnought UES Extinction, a ship so large it had its own gravitational field. Its weapons could sterilize entire planets, and its mere presence in a system was enough to make civilizations surrender. Marine Colonel Blackstone received a priority message and read it with growing satisfaction. "Lieutenant, patch me through to all Marine units." When the connection was established, her voice carried across dozens of ships to thousands of human warriors. "Marines, we're not going to rescue the Zalani. We're going to avenge them. Every hostile we find dies. No prisoners, no quarter, no mercy. The galaxy is about to learn why humans are the apex predators of known space." The response was immediate and terrifying. Thousands of voices raised in a battle cry that would have made ancient human warriors proud. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other species were beginning to understand what they had unleashed. The Zalani attack had awakened something that had been sleeping for too long. Intelligence reports flooded in about the human fleet assembly, and each one painted a more terrifying picture than the last. On the neutral world of Centauri Prime, the Galactic Intelligence Network was in complete chaos. Director Vexitar, a normally calm Andromedan, was pacing frantically as reports streamed in. 238 ships, he muttered to his staff. "That's not a rescue mission. That's a genocidal war fleet. Whoever attacked the Zalani just signed their species' death warrant." His aide, a young Rigelian named Kolvar, was monitoring galactic communications. "Sir, we're receiving reports that human merchant vessels are evacuating non-essential personnel from all border regions. They're clearing the path for their military." Vextar stopped pacing. "They're not just going to destroy the attackers. They're going to make sure everyone in the galaxy sees it happen. This is a message written in blood and fire." Back at the assembly point, Admiral Torres stood before a holographic display showing the complete human armada. It was beautiful and terrifying, a perfect killing machine that represented humanity's true nature when pushed too far. All ships, he announced on fleet-wide communications. We jump to hyperspace in 30 minutes. Our destination is the Zalani homeworld. Our mission is total annihilation of all hostile forces. The galaxy will remember this day as the moment they learned never to touch humanity's friends. As the countdown began, space itself seemed to hold its breath. 238 human warships prepared to unleash a level of destruction that would echo across the galaxy for generations. This wasn't just revenge, it was a demonstration of why humanity had earned its place as the most feared species in known space. The age of diplomacy was over. The age of human wrath had begun. The Void Reapers had been celebrating their easy victory over the defenseless Zalani when their sensors detected something that turned their triumph into absolute terror. Fleet Commander Gorthak was reviewing the spoils of war aboard his flagship when his tactical officer began screaming in panic. "Commander, massive hyperspace signatures detected, 200+ contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge." Gorthak laughed dismissively. "Impossible. No species maintains fleets that large. It's probably sensor interference from all the debris we've created." But when the tactical display updated, his laughter died in his throat. The screen showed a formation that defied all logic. An armada so vast it looked like a moving constellation of death. The lead ships alone were larger than anything in the Void Reaper fleet. What species has this many warships?" Gorthak whispered, his voice trembling. "Sir," his communications officer reported with growing horror, "we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies. It's from the humans." The word humans sent a chill through the bridge. Every pirate, raider, and criminal in the galaxy knew the stories. Humans were the species that had appeared from nowhere 50 years ago and systematically destroyed 3 major criminal organizations that tried to raid their colonies. They were the apex predators that disguised themselves as diplomats. "Put it through," Gorthak ordered, though his hands were shaking. A cold, emotionless voice filled the bridge. "This is Admiral Jackson Torres of the Human Federation. You have 1 minute to surrender unconditionally, or we will demonstrate why your species chose the wrong target. This is your only warning." Gorthak tried to maintain his composure. "This is Fleet Commander Gorthak of the Void Reapers. We claim this system by right of conquest. Withdraw your forces or face the consequences." The response was immediate and terrifying. "Your minute is up." What happened next would be remembered as the most one-sided slaughter in galactic history. The human fleet moved with predatory precision, their weapons systems lighting up space with deadly beauty. The lead dreadnought, UES Extinction, fired its main gun, a weapon designed to crack moons in half. The beam of concentrated energy struck the Void Reaper flagship and simply erased it from existence. One moment it was there, the next it was expanding plasma and debris. Gorthak and his entire crew died so quickly they never realized what had happened. Captain Volkov watched from the bridge of the Starforge as his fleet systematically dismantled the enemy force. "Tactical, target their command ships first. I want their entire command structure eliminated within the first 5 minutes." "Aye, sir," Morrison replied, his fingers dancing over his console with deadly precision. "All batteries fire at will." The human fleet spread out like a pack of wolves, each ship moving with terrifying coordination. Their weapons technology was decades ahead of anything the Void Reapers possessed. Plasma cannons that could melt battleship armor, rail guns that fired projectiles at near light speed, and missile systems that could track targets across entire star systems. On the surface of the Zalani homeworld, the surviving Void Reaper, ground forces watched in growing terror as their fleet was systematically annihilated above them. Commander Krixtall, leading the planetary occupation, tried desperately to contact his ships. "All vessels respond. What's happening up there?" The only response was static and the occasional death scream as another Void Reaper ship died. "Colonel, Blackstone was monitoring the space battle from her assault carrier when she received authorization for planetary assault. All Marines prepare for orbital drop. We're going in hot and heavy. Remember, no survivors among the hostiles." Her Marines were humanity's finest warriors, genetically enhanced and equipped with power armor that made them look like walking tanks. Each one was worth a dozen normal soldiers, and they were about to drop onto a planet where the enemy was already demoralized and terrified. The first wave of assault pods screamed through the atmosphere like falling meteors. The Void Reapers on the ground watched in horror as hundreds of these death capsules slammed into the surface around their positions. When the pods opened, nightmares stepped out. Human Marines in full combat armor were terrifying to behold, 7 feet tall in their powered suits, bristling with weapons, and moving with the coordinated precision of apex predators. The Void Reapers had been expecting to fight other pirates or maybe some local defense force. They had not expected to face humanity's military elite. The battle on the ground was even more one-sided than the space engagement. Void Reaper weapons barely scratched human armor, while human weapons cut through enemy forces like they were made of paper. The raiders who had been so confident in their superiority found themselves being hunted by something far more deadly than they had ever imagined. "This is Colonel Blackstone to all units." Her voice crackled over the communication network. "Secure all Zilani survivors and eliminate all hostile forces. Show them what happens when someone threatens humanity's friends." In hidden shelters beneath the surface, Zilani civilians huddled together, listening to the sounds of battle above them. Research Director Kethvar, who had sent the original distress call, whispered to his people, "The humans came. They actually came for us." An elderly Zilani scientist named Virana looked up with tears in her large, gentle eyes. "Listen to that. That's not the sound of a rescue mission. That's the sound of vengeance. The humans are showing the galaxy what happens when you hurt their friends." Above them, the slaughter continued. The Void Reapers, who had thought themselves the terror of the Outer Rim, discovered they were nothing compared to humanity when it decided to show its true face. This wasn't just a military response. It was a demonstration of why every species in the galaxy feared to wake the sleeping giant called humanity. The age of human mercy was over. The age of human wrath had arrived. The complete annihilation of the Void Reaper fleet took exactly 17 minutes. What had once been a formidable criminal armada was now nothing but debris and expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Not a single enemy ship survived to tell the tale of what they had witnessed. Colonel Blackstone's boots crunched on broken crystal as she walked through what had been a beautiful Zilani research facility. Her Marines had finished their grim work with terrifying efficiency. The Void Reaper ground forces that had terrorized innocent civilians were now scattered remains across the crystal gardens they had destroyed. "Colonel," Sergeant Rex Thompson reported through his armor's communication system. "Final sweep complete. No hostile survivors detected. We've located approximately 3,000 Zilani civilians in the underground shelters." "Excellent work, Sergeant. Begin evacuation procedures immediately." Blackstone paused, looking up at the sky where human warships maintained orbital positions like guardian angels of death. "Send a message to Admiral Torres. The surface is secure." In the shelters below, the Zilani survivors were experiencing something they had never felt before, the protective fury of humanity unleashed on their behalf. Research Director Kethvar emerged from the deepest shelter, his translucent blue skin pale with shock as he saw the devastation above ground. "The raiders, what happened to them?" he asked a human Marine who was helping evacuate injured civilians. The Marine's voice was emotionless through his helmet speakers. "They don't exist anymore. Humanity doesn't leave enemies alive when they hurt our friends." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the news of what had happened in the Zilani system was spreading like wildfire through every communication network. The speed and brutality of humanity's response had sent shockwaves through every civilized world. On the neutral trading station Deep Space Nine, alien merchants and diplomats gathered around holographic displays showing the aftermath of the battle. The images were horrifying. An entire star system cleansed of all hostile presence in less than 4 hours. 238 human warships, whispered Ambassador Thalara of the Centaurian Alliance. They brought enough firepower to conquer half the galaxy just to rescue one species. Trade Minister Corvin of the Hegemony Worlds was frantically updating his government's diplomatic protocols. Issue immediate orders. No hegemony vessel is to approach human space without explicit permission. Cancel all military exercises near their borders. We cannot afford to be misunderstood. The most terrifying aspect wasn't just the overwhelming firepower humanity had displayed. It was the surgical precision with which they had applied it. Every shot had found its target. Every movement had been coordinated. This wasn't just superior technology. This was a species that had evolved warfare into an art form. Back on the Starforge, Captain Volkov was receiving reports from across the galaxy as news of their intervention spread. The reactions were exactly what Admiral Torres had intended: absolute terror mixed with grudging respect. "Captain," Communications Officer Martinez reported, "we're receiving diplomatic messages from 47 different species. They're all essentially saying the same thing. They had nothing to do with the Zilani attacks and want to ensure continued peaceful relations with humanity." Volkov smiled coldly. "Fear is the most honest emotion in the galaxy. When species are afraid, they tell the truth." Lieutenant Commander Morrison pulled up tactical displays showing the expanding wave of panic across neighboring sectors. "Sir, 3 major criminal organizations have announced their immediate dissolution. The Crimson Syndicate just released all their prisoners and abandoned their territory. They're calling it preventive diplomacy." The bridge crew shared dark laughter at that. Preventive diplomacy was a polite way of saying they were terrified that humanity might decide they were next. Admiral Torres chose this moment to broadcast a message that would become legendary throughout galactic history. Every communication network in known space carried his words. To all species and governments listening to this transmission, today, humanity responded to an attack on our allies, the Zilani. The aggressors no longer exist. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Any species that harms humanity's friends will face the same fate. We do not negotiate with terrorists. We do not accept half measures. We eliminate threats completely and permanently. Choose your actions carefully. The message was broadcast in 67 different languages and reached every corner of civilized space. The response was immediate and universal. Panic, fear, and a desperate rush by every government to ensure they were not on humanity's bad side. On the Thessian homeworld, the ruling council held an emergency session that lasted 18 hours. Chancellor Veltara addressed her people with words that would reshape galactic politics. "The humans have reminded us all of a fundamental truth. There are shepherds, sheep, and wolves in this galaxy. Today we learned that humanity has always been the apex predator, and they were simply choosing to be gentle with the rest of us." Colonel Blackstone stood in the main Zilani shelter, surrounded by the species humanity had just saved. The gratitude in their large, gentle eyes was overwhelming, but what struck her most was something else. They weren't just grateful for being rescued. They were awed by the sheer destructive power humanity had unleashed on their behalf. "You came for us," Research Director Kethover said softly. "When we sent that desperate message, we hoped someone might help. We never imagined anyone would bring the entire fury of their species to save ours." Blackstone's expression was hidden behind her helmet, but her voice carried the pride of her entire species. "That's what humanity does, Director. We protect our friends, all of them, always." As the last Void Reaper remains were cleared from the system and the Zilani survivors were evacuated to safety, the galaxy settled into a new reality. Humanity had sent a message written in blood and fire, and everyone had received it loud and clear. The age of taking humanity's kindness for weakness was over. The terrifying truth about human nature had been revealed for all to see. 3 months after the Zilani incident, as historians would later call it, the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The terrifying display of human military might had rewritten every diplomatic relationship, trade agreement, and military alliance in known space. Captain Volkov stood in the rebuilt Zilani capital, watching as the crystal spires rose once again toward the sky. The Zilani had insisted on building a monument in the center of their city, a towering structure dedicated to the day humanity showed its true face. The inscription was written in both Zilani script and human languages. "Here stands proof that when darkness threatens the innocent, humanity becomes the light that burns it away." Captain, Research Director Kethvar approached with his usual gentle demeanor, though there was something different in his large eyes now, a deep respect mixed with awe. The final refugee ships have returned home. Our people are safe because of what your species did for us. Volkov nodded, but his expression remained serious. The galaxy needed to learn a lesson, Director. Some species only understand one language: overwhelming force. The truth was that humanity's response had created exactly the effect Admiral Torres had intended. Fear had brought peace to regions that had been plagued by piracy and raiding for decades. Criminal organizations had either disbanded or moved so far into uncharted space that they posed no threat to civilized worlds. On Earth, the Global Defense Council was meeting to discuss the new reality they had created. Admiral Torres addressed the assembled leaders with the weight of galactic history on his shoulders. Ladies and gentlemen, our response to the Zilani crisis has fundamentally altered humanity's position in galactic politics. We are no longer seen as just another spacefaring species. We are now recognized as the apex military power in known space. Secretary General Maria Santos reviewed the reports flooding in from human diplomatic missions across the galaxy. Admiral, we're receiving requests for mutual defense treaties from over 100 species. They all want to be under humanity's protection. And the criminal elements? Torres asked. Completely collapsed in 17 sectors. The remaining pirate groups have retreated so far into the outer rim that they're no longer a threat to anyone. Fear of humanity has accomplished what decades of coordinated law enforcement could not. Colonel Blackstone, recently promoted to general for her role in the Zilani operation, added her perspective. Sir, our intelligence networks are reporting that several species have begun referring to humans as the galaxy's guardians. They see us as the ultimate deterrent against anyone who would threaten peaceful civilizations. But the most significant change was in how humanity saw itself. The species that had spent 50 years trying to be good galactic citizens had discovered that sometimes being terrifying was the most effective way to protect the innocent. On the trading station, Babylon Central, alien merchants now spoke of humanity in hushed, respectful tones. The casual arrogance that some species had shown toward humans was completely gone, replaced by careful deference and genuine fear. The humans are different from us, explained Merchant Captain Zilnok to a group of younger traders. When we get angry, we make noise and threats. When humans get angry, they bring 200 warships and erase you from existence. Never forget, their kindness is a choice, not a weakness. In the academic halls of the prestigious Andromeda University, Professor Vextal was delivering a lecture that would become required reading for every xenosociology student in the galaxy. The Zilani incident revealed the fundamental truth about humanity that we had all chosen to ignore. They are not explorers who learned to fight. They are warriors who chose to explore. Their entire evolutionary history is one of surviving impossible odds through superior aggression and tactical thinking. When they appeared on the galactic stage as diplomats and traders, we assumed this was their nature. We were wrong. That was simply the face they chose to show us. Back on the Starforge, now permanently stationed in Zilani space as a reminder to anyone who might have ideas about threatening humanity's allies, Captain Volkov received a priority transmission from Admiral Torres. Captain, I wanted you to know that the Galactic Council has officially recognized humanity as a Tier 1 civilization, the first species to achieve that status in over 300 years. They've also formally requested that we establish a permanent peacekeeping force to respond to similar crises. Volkov smiled grimly. In other words, they want us to be the galaxy's attack dogs. More like the galaxy's apex predators, Captain, and given what we've accomplished, I think we've earned that position. The transformation was complete. Humanity had spent decades building relationships through trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. But it took one devastating display of military power to achieve what all that soft diplomacy never could: absolute respect and genuine peace through superior firepower. Research Director Kethvar often stood before the monument in the rebuilt Zilani capital, remembering the day his people learned they had the most powerful friends in the galaxy. Children would ask him about the humans, and he would tell them the truth. The humans are the kindest, most generous species we have ever met. They share their knowledge freely, help those in need, and ask for nothing in return. But remember this, little ones. Their kindness is a gift they choose to give. Beneath that kindness lies the most terrifying military force the galaxy has ever seen. They are our protectors, our guardians, and the reason we sleep safely at night. As years passed, the galaxy settled into what historians would call the Pax Humana, the human peace. Piracy dropped to almost zero. Wars between species became virtually extinct. Trade flourished under the protection of humanity's terrifying reputation. The alien emergency call that had unleashed humanity's terrifying Armada had done more than save the Zilani. It had revealed to the galaxy that the most dangerous predator in known space had been hiding among them all along, wearing the mask of friendship and diplomacy. And everyone was grateful that humanity had chosen to be their protector rather than their conqueror.